Whether you're homeschooling or teaching a single subject at home, like English or maths, it's not always easy to separate the teacher from the mom. In this video, I'll give you some classroom management tips for teacher moms to help you make that transition a little bit more smoothly. Hi, I'm Adriana. Welcome back to my channel where you can find the inspiration to simplify, enjoy, and celebrate your multicultural life. If you like what you see, make sure to hit subscribe. No matter what our job is, we all know that it's not always easy to separate work from home. Now, if you're a professional that is self-employed and has an office at home, then the situation is going to be even more difficult. But when you are a professional that just has to work on a computer, pardon me for the use of the word just, but just has to work from a computer with a Skype connection, talking to clients across the globe or whatever, or just using the internet, a phone, all you really need is your quiet space, your quiet corner for 8 hours a day or however many hours you work, and that's it. At the end of the day, you close your laptop and you're done. Work is work, home is home. It's not as easy as being in a separate office, but it's a little bit easier. Now, when that professional is a teacher, however, things are going to get more difficult. So we're going to add some elements here that are going to make the situation really explosive. Let's imagine that that professional is a teacher that's working with kids, young kids that are coming in and out of the house every day. Now let's add something more. Let's say that the kids in the classroom are actually the teacher's kids. Now things are going to get really, really, really difficult. Not because it's difficult to work with kids. That's not the problem. The problem is really separating home from work, because when you're working with your own children at home, it's not just about the environment anymore. It's not just about the workplace. But what begins to mesh together is the fact that work and home is now on an emotional level. Not just on the environmental level, but on an emotional level as well. But here's what you can do to make that transition just a little bit easier. Designate a workplace. I know, easier said than done, right? But what you can do is use the same area of your house every single time, but make sure you add a visual element that is going to make it really different from your regular home environment. Our sight is the first sense we rely on when we take in information from our environment. So if we have a visual element that just jumps out at us, that says, this is work, this isn't home, that's going to make things easier. What am I talking about? Imagine you're working in your kitchen, on your kitchen table. Instead of just working on your kitchen table, make sure you have a bright red tablecloth, maybe a plastic tablecloth. That way, if the kids write on it, it's not a problem. A bright red tablecloth that you would never use at home. So and why do I say bright red? Because it shocks you. It really hits you. If you see that really bright element out there, at once that becomes work. When you remove the tablecloth at the end of the lesson, your kitchen is back to normal. I don't know about scraps of paper on the floor, I'm not talking about that. But at least what your eyes immediately see will be your regular kitchen table. But when you've got the red tablecloth on there, you know it's work time. Or let's say you work in the living room. Same thing, have a bright rug. If you don't have a rug, it could even be a bright sheet. Keep it bright. Make sure it jumps out at you though. Keep it bright. And have the kids sit on that when they're sitting on the ground, on the floor in your living room. But make sure it's something that you could easily remove at the end. And instead of hoarding all of your supplies, carrying your supplies from one shelf, from one place to another. All of my stuff here on the back shelf, I've got all the books I need, all of my stuff. But this is my office. It's not my house, it's not my kitchen. So if you need to have your stuff, the last thing you want to do is go into your living room and take stuff off your shelf and have another shelf in another canister in your kitchen with your supplies, because you'll always be seeing these things. What you might want to invest in is in a simple little trolley that you could just roll in when it's time for your lesson and roll out when the lesson's over. Out of sight, out of mind. Establishing a rotation system is easy, and it's going to allow you to concentrate on the kids instead of concentrating on the niceties or on the formalities. All you have to do is pick a child's name out of a bag, and that's the child you're going to start with. No matter what you do, whether you ask questions, you ask them to come up to the front of the class, you ask them to demonstrate something, it doesn't matter. You're just going to rotate starting with that child. First that child, then the next one, then the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, and then back to the first child. And around you go. You won't have to be thinking. You won't have to be judging, should I have my child answer this question? And guess what? If the easy question lands on your child, no big deal, because sooner or later, your kid is going to get the difficult question. So don't worry about that, because the more you worry about that, the less you concentrate on listening to what your kids are saying. Because remember, when you're educating children, you're not putting information into their brain, you're pulling information out of their brain, because teachers always have to listen to what their kids are giving them. So you need to be concentrated on them and forget about all the formalities. Forget you're the teacher. Don't get so caught up in the role of being your kid's teacher that you forget the most important role, and that is being your child's mother or father. You might be a man watching this video. Sometimes we forget that. Not that we forget that we're parents. I mean, of course not. But sometimes we forget that we're not just teachers. And it's happened to me. I'm so caught up in correcting that I end up correcting my own kids. And I've done it. You've probably done it. But you know what? Stop doing it, because it's really, it can be really harmful to the relationship with your child. Remember that especially when we're dealing with young children, remember that young children do everything with excitement and energy and explosiveness. And if they're at that kitchen table talking to you and they're telling you about their day and they want to tell you what they did at school, or what they did at their friend's house, or what happened in the park, or whatever, and they're on a roll, they want to tell you, and you're constantly interrupting, because they're making maybe grammatical mistakes, or they're using the wrong word, or they're chewing with their mouth open, or they're slouched all over the table. Whatever the reason is, if you're constantly interrupting, the message your child is going to perceive is, one, my parent is more interested in how I'm saying things than what I'm saying. And that's going to lead to, what's the point? Why do I have to tell my parent anything? Do I want to tell my parents anything? So that will just kind of close that communication that you may have started. And not only, it will also kind of put the child off of speaking altogether. And especially if you have a young child that is still learning his or her own mother tongue. I'm not talking about a second language, even though that's what I do for work. I'm talking about their mother tongue. If they're still between the age of 1 and 5, that's when we're learning our mother tongue. If we're still learning that, and they're 5 or 6 years old, and they're telling you these things, and you're constantly correcting, they may be put off the idea of speaking altogether. So your effort to correct them, to help them improve their language or whatever, might actually have a boomerang effect. That's, I think, the first thing. Now, of course, we want to correct their mistakes, but please, when you are with your child and you are just a parent, there's my use of just once again, just a parent, as if it were easy, right? But when you're just a parent, decide whether correcting is important in that moment or not. Because sometimes you might just want to let it go and listen to what your kid is saying. Ask more questions, have them think about it, have them explore their feelings. All of these great things that you can do with your kids. You might want to leave correcting that mistake for a later time. I mean, if it's worth correcting, then it's probably something that's going to pop up in the future anyway. So you'll just have a chance to do it at at a later time. And the last thing I want to remind you is to have one-on-one time. Siblings have to share their parents, and that is always a reason for jealousy. But children of mom teachers or teacher moms, teacher dads, these children have to share their parents with other children. And sometimes that can be a little bit difficult and emotionally kind of an emotional charge that kids have to do. It's not easy. So one thing you should always remember is to find time, no matter how many kids you have and how many kids you're working with, find time, one-on-one time for each child individually. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be a walk around the block, taking your dog out. It could be going on a treasure hunt looking for rocks. It could be a trip to the supermarket and then maybe an ice cream cone afterwards just to have a chat. But just one-on-one time. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it is worth gold to your child. If you're a teacher mom and you're thinking about teaching English to your children, then make sure to watch the video that's on your screen right now. Because when you're doing the teacher mom thing in a different language, there are just a few things you need to adjust before you get started. So make sure you check out that video. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.